Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today for my talk on the eclipses. And I would bet that everyone is feeling it. It's kind of like, when is it going to stop? And we've just come up with, we're just under the influence of Mars retrograde, but I don't think anything is slowing down. Would you all agree with me there? Yes. All right. So I'm going to talk about the eclipses today, and today is July 12th, and we have the solar eclipse happening today, and the time is 7:48 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And for you, wherever you may be, if you draw up a chart for your location, then that will move the chart around. Let me get that chart up, and here it is. I'm going to move my things around here. So today's solar eclipse, partial solar eclipse, it's a partial solar eclipse, but I also want to mention that it is a super new moon as well too. So it's got a little oomph because of the super moons, and whether you feel the difference between a super moon and a regular moon, it just does give a little bit more energy to the eclipse. And this eclipse, which I'm sure everybody is watching with great interest, is a very dynamic eclipse. The eclipse is right here. I have drawn up, by the way, I should just mention that for teaching purposes and for simplicity's sake, I will draw up a chart to discuss with a 0 Aries rising. The reason for the 0 Aries rising is it puts all of the planets in their natural houses. So for a quick reference, your eye can readily pick up the information. And so here is the eclipse, the sun moon here at 20 plus of Cancer. And usually when we are when we're looking at things, we'll round up, so 21 degrees of Cancer. So this is a new moon in Cancer, and it is being opposed by, or opposing planet Pluto, which is at 20 degrees Capricorn and also retrograde. Now, Pluto has been back and forth over that 20 degrees quite a bit, so this energy is something that I think is quite familiar to a lot of us. And, you know, I just want to say that as I was preparing today, I was just seeing what was happening on the news. And, you know, right now in the city of Toronto, Canada, there is a security alert. And yesterday, there was some information passed around that suggested that today there was going to be a vehicle attack, and so they have the police force out very, in very high visibility in all of the kind of major feature buildings in the Toronto area. So everybody's on kind of high alert, and you may feel that that extra anxiety or tension, or other shoe gonna drop, or whatever kind of vulnerability is a Cancer archetype. So if you're feeling emotionally vulnerable, this is this nature of this eclipse. So let me just say that a partial eclipse, and last year I did a Zoom meeting on the 2017 eclipses, and I talked a lot about the Cero series and so on, and I'm not going to go over that information again for you today. That's in the catalogs back there if you want to look that up. But a partial eclipse is either at sort of at the beginning of a Cero series, or more towards the finishing off of the Cero series. A total eclipse is going to be a peak, and we have a total eclipse, lunar eclipse, happening on the 27th of July. This is a partial eclipse, and when you have a partial eclipse, the eclipse is wide to the karmic axis, so the nodes. So you can see here that the nodes are, I have things going up there, 20 and a half Cancer, and the node is a 5. So we have here, with that 15 degrees between the north node or the nodes and the sun-moon position. So that's a bit wide. And let me just say that all eclipses are acceleration archetypes. They are energy peaks. So I will always look throughout the year for the eclipses to see when we might be in an activity peak. And certainly we are one now. We have 3 eclipses in a row, July 12, July 27, and August 11. Both the July 12 and the August 11 are partial solar eclipses, and both of those eclipses are also supermoons. The eclipse on the 27th, which you may have read something about, is very, very dynamic. It is a total lunar eclipse. We had a total lunar eclipse at the start of the year as well, too. This one is really featured because it will be the longest of the century, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. I just want to talk about this eclipse today. So the first thing is that solar eclipse is a new moon. So a new moon suggests that a new cycle is beginning. And with a solar eclipse, there's really, the new cycle begins on something ending and something beginning. And there was this week 2 people quit the British Parliament, you know, and I want to talk about the Thailand soccer team rescue here with you in a moment as well too. That was a big feature. Lots of activities going on in the world, but you do see endings and beginnings, and maybe these are some things that are happening in your life as well too. The Cancer and Capricorn themes, anyway, the 4th house and the 10th house of the chart, those archetypes here are ending and beginning patterns anyway. Sorry, let me just gather my thought here for a moment on that. So we have, you know, so we have a new cycle beginning today. And it is one that is very potent. And I think that this eclipse has both a sense of immediacy here in terms of time is running short. And I also think that whatever begins now is something that we will be dealing with for the long haul. In 2020, we will have a stellium of planets that are at 2021 degrees. Pluto, Capricorn, I meant to say, Pluto, Saturn, you know, Jupiter will all be there in the year of 2020. All the fast-moving planets are going to be there, and the nodal axis will get there as well, too. So I'm looking at this eclipse as being somewhat of a window of opportunity, or it is a window, whatever is being seeded now, whatever is taking root now, whatever is being, you know, being solidified now is setting a foundation, and it is the work that we will be doing over this next 1.5 to 2 years to the stellium that will all converge with Pluto up there in the 10th house. So this is quite important. And let me just say that this eclipse is also engaging a grand trine in Earth. And that grand trine in Earth is Venus here in the sign of Virgo, with Ceres in Virgo as well too, connected to, that's the theme of abduction and return, by the way, and certainly you know, about the Thailand boys, it fits there, and a few different things. Saturn up here in the sign of Capricorn and also retrograde. Both Pluto and Saturn are retrograde. And we have Uranus and Juno, the contract asteroid, involved in this grand trine. So we have, you know, quite a dynamic trine here. And I must also point out that, of course, we have Mars. Mars is retrograde, and it is on this south node. Mars is retrograde right now at 7:35 Aquarius, and Mars is traveling out of bounds in south declination. South declination, it is connected to the south node, and it will stay in out of bounds declination until the beginning of September. All right. So we have a powered up Mars. We have a very intensified eclipse here, partial eclipse. Solar eclipses, they say, are bring more of the kind of eventfulness of the world and how that affects us, or directly or indirectly. Where lunar eclipses have more to do with a personal and private life journey, but I don't see much difference if they are hitting on your chart. Something really significant is going on in your personal life, right? So I was thinking about this eclipse, and first of all, let me just say a new moon in Cancer, the Cancer archetype. Cancer and Capricorn archetype are, of course, two signatures that deal with the past, and Capricorn is our relationship to external authority. It's all what has been built, and whether that serves or does not serve the evolutionary mandate at the moment. Pluto is in Capricorn retrograde, and Saturn is in retrograde as well too. So this is again a kind of a time to rebuild. Let me just say, to rebuild that which you give your power to in terms of the shoulds and the musts and the appropriates, and how things are being structured, or how you are structuring what you think is necessary and a priority for you. These Capricorn retrograde is to reprioritize, right? Okay. So the Cancer archetype, that deals with many different things. Of course, Cancer we know to be dealing with the personal and private life journey, the home, family, the children, how we nurture and nourish, right? The Cancer archetype in evolutionary astrology, this is the self-image, or the ego self. And also to the Cancer archetype corresponds to our subconscious or subconscious personalities and so forth. So all of that is with the eclipse opposing Pluto. There's an awful lot of review that is taking place. And if you were, kind of looking inwardly and, bringing back things, memories are coming up and they're striking emotional chords. This is a very emotional eclipse. And eclipses always produce some kind of jolt or some kind of surprise that, takes us out of one place and thrusts us into something else quite quickly. And I wanted you to indulge me a little bit, if you will. I was thinking that I wanted to talk about the Thailand soccer team and their ordeal, and how it is such a metaphor for the exploration of our emotional journey, right? And I was thinking about these the whole dynamic of how the whole scenario unfolded, and I think that here's the first thing, going into the cave and going to explore, right? And this idea where when we are living our lives, we are exploring, building a life. And I think that we're not really conscious of the fact that we're also exploring something much deeper, and exploring, the subconscious content that is within our memory banks, that is housed within our emotional fields, and that all has to do with, our security and our needs, and our need to be safe and protected and loved, and to have our needs met, and all of these things. the Cancer archetype is also an archetype of self-preservation here. And you know, we fall back on the past when we do Cancer because of the you know, we fall back on what is secure, whether that is good for us or not, kind of remains to be seen. I think the tension between the eclipse and Pluto is not allowing you to fall back on old techniques of self-preservation, because you know, with the Cancer Pluto archetype being shown here, that's running out of steam. Pluto itself is swinging its wrecking ball on all structural dynamics, and that includes the structure of consciousness, you know, the subconscious, everything that has outworn its usefulness, that is no longer serving, and that we can no longer build in a way that will create the security or create the needs that will best support us to thrive, right? You know, so all that kind of is in that dynamic. And I think about these boys going into this cave to go exploring, and I think that's how we start our journey. We go into the cave and we start exploring, and we don't know where we're going, you know, and these boys have, you know, gone into the dark, and I think that as we journey through life, you know, we're not always completely conscious of all that we are tapping or resourcing in terms of what we are meeting up with, you know, and there's a certain amount of you know, there's a certain amount of danger that's connected with living our lives, right? You know, we get involved in relationships and so on, and we don't know whether, you know, whether we will always be nurtured or protected or safe, you know, throughout life, right? You know, so these boys go into this cave, and then and then the water comes rushing in, and I was thinking about how one of the people in charge, I don't know if it was the prime minister or so on, they were interviewing him, and he said, "Oh, we're really at a war with water." And I was thinking that that was such a metaphor for this eclipse opposing Pluto. We're at a war with water. Well, what kind of water are we at a war with? You know, and when we have the Capricorn archetype relative to this Cancer Capricorn theme, you know, this can play into the distortions of water, water being the emotions, right? You know, so all of our fears and, you know, and all of our blame and all of our, you know, band-aids, you know, all of the distorted ways that we seek to get our needs met, whether we put that blame out there or we, you know, or we sell ourselves short, or we, you know, take advantage of other people, or, you know, whatever it is that we do. You know, there's a lot that's going on in the U.S. right now that is really, I think, you know, bringing out a lot of the shadow side of, you know, of consciousness, of people's emotions and who they are, you know, me against you, and you know, and so forth, right? You know, so there's a lot of things going on there. And so I think that, you know, that's what we're really doing with this eclipse, is doing a war with what's on the inside, on our subconscious, or fears, you know, the fears that keep us attached to continuing on when we know that it isn't in our own best interest, right? And then, you know, it just seems to me how, you know, the boys in the cave, and, you know, how an ultimate sacrifice was made. You know, there was a death in the process. I'm sure everyone knows the story, you know, and that death was actually somebody who had expertise and who had experience and age, right? You know, so for even it to be dangerous for something that is very well developed, or, you know, very mature in scope, let me say that. This whole event of the rescue out of the cave was a lot of thinking and planning and so forth, and that's perhaps the nature of the Mars retrograde right now, is before action, some thinking and some planning being the Pluto and Capricorn. And throughout this whole process, you know, what there was with that whole event you didn't see the news reports and a lot of blame and a lot of hatred and a lot of, like, once you get out, I'm going to, it was all coming together in terms of support and pooling together and nurturing all of that, as opposed to some of the politics that you see as is going on in the U.S. and especially with the with the anger flares that come up when people feel injustice has been served, or when there are differences of opinions, and all of the kinds of things. I think you all get what I'm getting at here. And then I was thinking how they took the boys out, and in taking the boys out, and looking at the cave drawing. I'm sorry, I should actually move forward. Let me just see if I have. Oh, there's the boys. There's the boys there in the cave, right? How the stillness and the sitting. The Capricorn piece is limited movement. To get there. Here's some pictures of the boys here. Sorry, I can't find my map is way back there. I'm sorry, the pictures are not in order, but thinking how they had to do a Mount Everest journey, as they said, to get out of the cave, and there were many twists and turns along the way, and there were places in the journey that were completely submerged, and other places where they could walk, right? Others were dry, and it's like, I think that all those twists and turns are exactly what we do when we are working through all of the emotional pieces that get us ready to undertake a significant, risk to make the change that is necessary for ourselves. It requires that we explore many different terrains, as these boys coming out of the tunnel had to do. They had to climb, they had to dive, they had to submerge in water, they could walk. It's all of that. And also too, they sedated the boys as well too, right? And so some of them were semi-conscious through some of that journey out. And I was thinking that there are times when we have to suspend our emotional drama, so to speak. When there's some times when it may serve for you to be numbing yourself a little bit, or to be, suppressing some of those emotions, so that the journey can be undertaken. Not to suppress it in a way that negates it altogether, if you get what I'm getting at. But there's the journey of water. We think about the moon and the moon's tides in the course of a month. It has many different faces, and water itself has many different states. And it is necessary for us to go through, the whole dynamic of water, in terms of working ourselves through a difficult passage. And so we may have fears, we may have insecurities, and so on, but it is absolutely necessary to get ourselves back out of the cave. You understand what I'm getting at? It just seemed to me to be such an incredible metaphor for the whole journey of facing what is now perhaps welling up inside of you, and taking a look at that and accepting all the various components in order to be able to undertake the journey to get to wherever it is that you need to. The grand trine in Earth, Venus in Virgo, connected to Saturn. The Venus position here is in a disseminating trine to Saturn in Capricorn, and Venus is the ruler of or dispositor of Uranus in Taurus as well too, and it's in a first quarter trine. This grand trine, allows for there to be some vulnerability. the grand trine is really exposing, I think, in terms of what it is that needs to be healed, what it is that needs to be improved upon, what needs to be corrected. You know, that's Virgo's job, is to look at what needs to be eliminated in order to be able to plant new seeds and to strengthen. So this whole Pluto, you know, eclipse here to me is a suggestion of refortifying from within. And you may have some thoughts about things that you feel that you should end in your life, or get to a place where you should draw a line in the sand. I think that this is a beginning point for being able to do that. Venus is creating vulnerability, so that that which is weak can be exposed. And as it is, and once it's exposed, it can then be corrected, it can then be healed. That's my take on this eclipse. The eclipse is happening in a few hours. You know, it's interesting. I wrote about this. I said that I felt that this Thailand rescue mission was really, the world needed a significant demonstration of the light, because we get so bombarded by the media in terms of all the negativity. And one thing that is, you know, the Cancer archetype brings up the children, brings up the vulnerable people. And in the U.S., the immigration policy that has separated the children from their parents, right? You know, and that's been such a juxtaposition, you know, and how the emotions have been directed towards that. You know, there's so much, you know, tension, and there's so much negativity that's surrounding that, and the government in that case has not showed up for the children. In the Thailand example, the government showed up for the children. You know, we have different levels that take place with every transit that we ever experience. And these are two examples that are totally you know, juxtaposed from one another. Today, Donald Trump has just gone to the United Kingdom. He's just finished NATO, where there's been, you know, quite a bit of turbulence through that meeting, and he's now in England. And the protesters, what they're using to protest his visit, is they're using audio of the children that have been separated, the crying of the children that have been separated. I just thought that was very, you know, very potent and very powerful in terms of this eclipse. So let me move on. I think I've said pretty much everything I want to say. Again, let me just say that that eclipses, if they are going to be relevant for you, that they would have to directly be aligned with your chart. And when we are looking at eclipses, I use about a 2-degree orb, sometimes 3-degree orb. Otherwise, the eclipse might just feel like a stronger new moon or a stronger full moon. All right, so that's kind of the dynamic of this. All right, I think, and let me say that, yeah. So you know, this eclipse and all the eclipses magnify the potential of whatever it touches. So we've got the moon, and the moon is relevant to the past, and it's a fluctuating archetype. And we have the sun, which is the creator archetype, both of those together working in tandem right now. So this is a chart that is, you know, it's very dynamic. Sorry, I just wanted to see if I have whatever shakes up here. Let me just say that whatever you know, whatever ends for you, or whatever plug gets pulled during this eclipse, you know that it is sweeping something that is necessary out of the way. Anywhere that you feel pushed or pulled, you know, it is adding more dimension to thrust you into more solution finding, or more, having the courage to initiate. The Cancer archetype is about something taking root. And, if we think about something taking root, it needs time to grow, right? Whatever it is here that is now setting into place. And, this may be for you obvious, or it may be subtle, it may be internal, or it may be eventful. Either way, expect that this eclipse is going to continue to develop as time moves forward. So let me move forward to the next eclipse. The sweet boys is, this is the total lunar eclipse. A shot of what it will look like on July 27. It is a blood moon, called the blood moon, and it is going to be the longest eclipse of the century. So usually, again, a total eclipse is going to be more potent than a partial eclipse, and one that has longer duration is going to be holding a magnetic resonance over a longer period as well too. Let me just find my pages here. Oh yeah, and this total lunar eclipse also too, the last time we had a total lunar eclipse, both the solar eclipse of July 12 today and the one of July 27 are of the same Saros series. And the last total lunar eclipse, the longest of the last century, from 1901 to 2000, was part of this Saros series as well too. It was July 16 of 2000. It was a total lunar eclipse. That total lunar eclipse was 24 degrees Cancer, and we had Mars at 19, almost 20 degrees of Cancer at that time. And you may or may not remember what took place for you. When I found this information, I thought back and I thought, wow, that was really a very potent eclipse for me. It did hit my chart. So now I have some thinking to do on how far I've come since then. Okay. All right, and this is the eclipse visibility. So we will not be seeing it in North America, but you can see the other areas. This is all information is readily available anywhere you look on the internet. I find that in terms of looking at the potency of an eclipse, you look at where the geodetic region is, where the eclipse is traveling, the geodetic region, and then at how it's affecting your chart. And all three of those are going to be qualifying how important the chart is for you in particular. So here is the total lunar eclipse on July 27. So this the reason that the eclipse will be red in color is because the total lunar eclipse is going to be picking up all the sunrises, and it's reflecting all the sunrises on Earth. So that's why a blood moon happens. And this is a total lunar eclipse. It's got a couple of very interesting features to it. At this point, the moon is in its furthest distance from the Earth. So because it is smaller, it will give us the totality. It's giving us the totality because of where it is in the solar Saros series. But because it is a smaller disk in our vision here, we will see that as a total eclipse, and it will appear darker. If you are, if you are a science buff, it will appear darker than other total eclipses. So, and that's kind of an interesting statement. If it's got some dark tones to it, this is a pretty potent eclipse because it is in the sign of, here it is right here, in the sign of Aquarius. The eclipse is 4.5 Aquarius. and we have Mars retrograde right with it. And a total eclipse, again, is in aspect to the nodal axis. This is, the moon is just 2 hours off and exact to the true node, and the sun is 1 day. So we have a great deal of potency by the nature of the eclipse on the karmic axis alone. We have the ruler of the north node eclipse, the sun, on it, and we have the ruler of the south node, Aquarius, which is Uranus, sitting here at 2 degrees. So we have Uranus squaring this nodes. Again, as I said, I'm pretty stingy with the orbs that I allow for an eclipse. Uranus is 2.5, and the eclipse is 4.5. That's definitely within range, right? All right. So first of all, in terms of that, we have the moon in its furthest distance from the Earth, but we have the Earth in its closest distance to the sun, and we have Mars, which forms a perihelic opposition with the sun. Just the day before, let me see, the time of the eclipse by Pacific time is 1:20 on the 27th, and on the 26th at 10:14 p.m. The sun and Mars oppose, Mars retrograde oppose. So we have Mars opposing the sun, but it's in its closest proximity to the sun. It's also in its closest proximity to the Earth. So we have a great deal of, increased energy happening from the nature of Mars's relationship to the sun and Mars's relationship to the moon. And this is it right here. Here's Mars opposite the sun and Mars conjunct the moon, right? So the actual proximity of Mars and Earth is July 31st. So this eclipse, 4 minutes, 4 days, they generally say, with eclipses, minutes are months, and for solar eclipses, minutes are years. But we are going to see the full moon in the sky, and we're going to see Mars there. Mars is in its best viewing and its closest proximity to the Earth since 2003. And the time, you may remember that I remember going to the observatory and being out there with the crowds and looking through telescopes at Mars. You may remember some, it was quite a big event at the time. Prior to that, it was 60,000 years prior to that Mars came in so close to us, right into the sun. So this is quite an event. And as I said earlier, Mars is in south declination, in out of bounds. Out of bounds means that it's beyond the sun's rays. How it relates to the Earth and latitude. And declination, and so when Mars is out of bounds, it's a renegade. It's already in Aquarius and retrograde, and when Mars is retrograde, it can be a thwarting archetype here. It's an unplug. It can inhibit or can hold you back from the normal course. And what we say with the Mars, it's in the sign of Aquarius, so it is really an excellent transit for pulling back and giving yourself more breathing space, for trying to cool it down, or for taking a more rational perspective. We always say with Mars retrograde to have a considered response instead of a reactive one. And that's the nature of it. But I'll tell you, since Mars turned retrograde, I haven't seen anything slow down, and I would say that probably you would agree with me as well too. The other thing with Mars in retrograde is that it heats up something internally, right? So something is heating up internally. But I think that what Mars in retrograde allows you to switch off this and go into that, but to go into this pretty full steam. So it's really good for doing something temporary. Certainly, you know, if you're if you're in summer and you're experiencing summer, then, you know, we kind of turn off the, you know, the drive to get somewhere, you know, professionally while we try to play with the kids. You know? That is an appropriate use. But Mars in the South Node is inflaming. Mars on the Moon can be inflaming. Mars is also forming a square to Uranus, which is triggering, right? And sorry, one more piece with this eclipse is so potent here. On the 25th of July, Mercury turns retrograde right there, you know, right there. So we all know that when Mercury turns retrograde, things don't go according to Hoyle, right? So Mercury is going to be retrograde, just have turned retrograde 2 days before this eclipse happens. Now we have an eclipse in Leo Aquarius, and Leo Aquarius is about rapid reinvention. It's about personal reinvention. It's about collective reinvention. And by the way, just back to the eclipse on the 12th, the Cancer Capricorn eclipse. Cancer rules the people. It represents the populace, you know, and so it's the people against the authority, or, you know, people against the public, or the government, and so on. We have lots of examples of how this the eclipses are playing out. It is for you with this eclipse to go inside and find your own inner authority, and to make up your own rules, and to hold yourself responsible and accountable for getting to wherever it is that you need to get to. You know, so you need to find it from within and build it from within, and build it as solidly as you can from within, so that you can weather you know, whatever threats from the outside may be coming your way. I'm not saying that they are, but, you know, that would be the nature of the transits here. So this eclipse, you know, Aquarius is, again, it rules social politics, and it rules the unexpected. And certainly we're going to see quite a firing up. So I don't think that there's any let up between the eclipse that we're having today and the kind of stoking of a fire all the way through the end of the month. As we come up to next week, there are some, you know, kind of the general transits are kind of okay, but from that last week to the end of the month and through the first few days of August, I think the intensity dial will be on no let up. So this transit here, if you are getting to the point of where you're saying, I can't go any longer, you know, I'm going to break in two, you know, like I need change, you know, if all that's the kind of mantra that you have going, this eclipse will do that, you know, whether you're the one pulling the plug and you go suddenly snap, or somebody else does it to you, or, you know, something happens that jettisons you. If this eclipse is, you know, if you have any planets that are hitting on these degrees, about the 3 to 5 of the fixed signs, then this eclipse will be quite relevant for you. And I'm sorry, I just have to look at my notes here, because of course we've got the Mars backing forth, and I think that these eclipses were, you know, triggered from the new moon in June, and certainly we see how, especially with retrograde planets and Mars retrograde, you know, things back up over the degrees and then they go back over it again, right? You know, so we've got Mars. Let me just find my note on that. We've got Uranus aspecting the karmic axis by square end of October through December. So Uranus is going to be continuing to be active, you know, activating, you know, the eclipse information, or this breakthrough. It's a breakup or a breakthrough. It's a cut to the chase. It is. This eclipse could be an aha moment, you know, it could be your, you know, stroke of genius. Mercury retrograde, let me just say, is not something to, you know, not something to avoid, in the fact that, you know, this is Mercury retrograde in Leo. it gives you the opportunity to rethink in terms of what's best for me. You know, a Leo archetype is what's best for me. The sun is aspecting the North Node here, which is, you know, giving, I would say that the nodes are like a toolkit that are giving you access to some content or some information that could help you to improve, to make some improvement for yourself. So, you know, this can be a very useful transit for creative self-actualization, for creative endeavor, you know, for working it out. And again, you know, we have these eclipses with Mars retrograde and Mercury retrograde. You know, what you want to be doing is, you know, allowing, you know, the creative flow of things to get yourself ready for when Mercury turns direct, when Mars turns direct, you know, middle of August, end of August into September. You know, work it out in your mind's eye or in your heart's eye first, and allow yourself to feel your way along till the point of where it really grabs you. You know, would be the thing. This eclipse as well too. Last eclipse we had Venus in the grand trine with Saturn and Uranus. Now look at where Venus is at 19 degrees of Virgo, trining this Pluto retrograde. Right, you know, so there's a great deal. These eclipses can bust up the concrete and they can create some pain. You know, divorce is very painful. You know, separation is very painful. But once the dust settles, the opportunity to build and to build it better is definitely within the range of possibility. We're being gifted that with this North Node to the Sun archetype here, right? Okay. So, so there's great possibility with this total lunar eclipse. But you will see the Mars Uranus square. I have here. You know, it's already taken place. It's already been active back. Well, Mars and Uranus were in square when Uranus went into Taurus and Mars went into Aquarius around May 15. Right? You know, they were both aspecting there. They were on a kind of a set the program into play. We have July 31st to August 3rd of Mars and Uranus again in an exact square, and September 15 to September 18 for the last of the three passes of Uranus and Mars in square. Right, you know, so certainly this is a work in progress, and we, you know, we see how these things move along. Let me the total lunar eclipse. All right. Oh, yeah, this is a 2000 eclipse. If you wanted to look at it, the last total lunar eclipse, 24 degrees Capricorn Cancer with Mars at 19 degrees, almost 20 degrees, where the July 12 eclipse is. So very interesting there. Metonic cycles are 18-year plus cycle. And here, here is the vision here. This is Mars. Here's Earth and the Sun. This is 2006. Every 2 years, Mars comes into closer proximity with the Sun. And here is the transit now with Mars close to the Earth and also opposing the Sun, but also close to the Sun as well too. So it's quite a unique setup. 2016, you know, the Moon position here in 2016. Sorry, minimum distance between Mars and the Earth, and now in 2018, how much bigger we will see Mars. So Mars goes away and comes back again in these 2-year cycles. And this is a graphic declinations here, and here is Mars. You see Mars, this line right here, 23.26 is the out of bounds degree, and Mars is traveling in south declination. Now, I have other things on my screen here. Sorry, I wanted to move that over. I don't know how I can get that back again. I don't know whether that is there. But you see that is going in its lowest point. It's increasing there. So just to demonstrate that. And here is the partial solar eclipse, the last of our 3 eclipses on August 11. And this one will be 18 degrees of 18 and a half, 19 degrees Leo. Mercury is still retrograde. This is, the eclipse is new to the new phase to the North Node. So we see, again, a partial eclipse. This is like 13 degrees away from the karmic axis. You'll see, again, that Mars is still, in quite close proximity to the South Node. We have a continuation in August. We have the closest transit of Saturn in retrograde with Uranus in Taurus. So, that facilitates the opportunity. I would say that the two of those together are innovative change. It is a good time to be making some significant change. This eclipse as well, too. Mercury retrograde, 14 degrees, squaring Jupiter as well, too. So Jupiter, let me just go to my chart here. Jupiter, I think it is in middle of September, will hit the, well, I can just look it up here, will hit the degree of that eclipse as well, too. That'll be, it'll be middle of September, about the 6th of September to about the 13th of September. So know that the eclipses are event generating when they happen, but that they, as I always say, it's like plucking the string of a musical instrument, that they reverberate over time. So they have a magnetic resonance, and they keep an intensity dial turned up for the potency of whatever the transits are juiced up or jacked up over a period of time. So watch the transits as we move forward from here. Jupiter hitting 18 degrees, 19 degrees to square the eclipse. Mars, regaining the 4 or 5 degrees of the total lunar eclipse at the end of July. Whatever it is that is being set up right now, it can go splat for you, but the processing or the developmental on it, or can go, it can be light bulb time or whatever it is. For these boys, the Thailand boys, they had this experience and now they've been freed and it's over. Their new reality, their ground zero started after they got out of the cave. Their life will never be the same. Their consciousness will never be the same. So a new reality is set in for them in some kind of striking, very dynamic way. And I think these eclipses are exceptionally potent too. Venus as well too is squaring Saturn. These eclipses are very, very dynamic. Certainly, we see what the political landscapes are. We see how much cultural things are needing to, make shifts. How learning to live as an organized whole is something that we really have to address as a priority. And so this is personal priorities and, and our relationship priorities and our living on the planet priorities as well, too. I have, I don't know if, I feel like I have some notification here. I'm not quite sure what that notification is. But I think I've come to the end of my my talk. If you have questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Rose. Could you please click on Stop Share at the top of the screen? Okay, do we have any questions? Please go ahead. Unmute. Rose. Yeah, Carolyn, go ahead, please.
Okay. Hi, Rose. I don't know if this is appropriate or good for this webinar, but could you look at the T-square, any one of them, and explain how the T-square works?
You want me to take one of the T-squares and, I'm sorry,
Take one of the,
I didn't hear the rest of the question, I'm sorry.
sorry, I looked away at my cat. Take one of the T-squares with the apex being Uranus and explain how that works. Like it's squared to maybe Chiron now and squared something else, and then you go across to make it better?
Okay. Yeah. All right. I will try to. I'll try to demonstrate that with the total lunar eclipse. So, can I go back to screen share here?
Yes, of course.
Oh, geodetic. Sorry. Let me just, before I answer that question, the area of Thailand, right in here, the geodetic of Cancer, highlighting, that July 12th eclipse. And remember, eclipses are always active before and after the fact. So the whole drama that played out during that period of time, that's there. We have a lot going on with, with Washington and Canada and NATO and, all that kind of stuff. So geodetic regions are interesting to see as well, too. Let me just see. Oh, yeah, that was in that region. Okay, let me go back. All right, okay. Total lunar eclipse. All right, so here we have a T-square. The T-square is made up of, Uranus is the apex of the T-square, and it is opposing, being square, it is squaring Mars, the moon, the south node on the one hand, and the sun and the north node on another. Well, again, whenever the planet is squaring the nodes, that's very important to evolutionary astrology. We call that a skip step, right? So right alone here, the fact that it is Uranus squaring that, and it is Aquarius Leo. The Aquarius Leo is, and the Uranian theme, Uranus is the planet of the collective conscious, right? So this is here an energizing or an awakening of the collective consciousness, right? So, and how that is being awakened, we have disruptive times, let's put it that way, with the south node in Aquarius. We have social upheaval and revolution with this kind of aspect right here. And by the way, the nodes are stationed during the eclipse. Station nodes are, again, a magnification. Any planet that is stationed is magnified. So again, they're intensification. So this Uranus is going to be triggering, this south node stuff. The moon deals with, memory imprints. And those memory imprints are going to be specific, and they're going to be collective. They're going to be both of those things. So specific is the moon, and it deals with the populace. It deals with the people. It deals with that. Aquarius deals with the tribe. It deals with the group. It deals with the community, but it also deals with the collective, right? Whenever we have Aquarius themes, when we see the karmic axis in that, we have revolutionary times. We have revolutions going on. We have social revolutions going on. We have upheaval going on. This is really a disruptive T-square. What it's meant is to disrupt the status quo. That's what the eclipse, the July 12th, is doing as well, too. Things have been really cemented. They've been really crystallized. They're really anchored. They're there. And it's time now to do some blasting. So this is what this Uranus is doing, is some shock waves, hitting some shock waves. That's the nature of the south node in Aquarius the whole time that it is going on. And by the way, that the Uranus position at 2 degrees is on the south node of Chiron as well, too. So it makes it even more painful. It's going to make it even more when we have the collective, the nodes, and we have Uranus transiting on the south node, then this is going to be, karmic peaks. What this karmic peak is bringing up, karmic content that is in what I call, Uranus is, and Aquarius is what I call a frozen state. So it is the memory pools, the cellular memory of the collective that is being tapped by this T-square. And it's this kind of continuous kind of like, bashing that's going on with the nodes, right? And remember, the nodes are wobbling too, so it's getting impact. It's getting impact. It's like, that's what that T-square is doing. Mars is coming about and re-energizing it and inflaming it, right? So this is, giving it energy. It's like putting new fuel in the tank to get the collective buzz going. I always say that, it's kind of cellular memory. That's the hair standing up on your arm, right? And that's kind of what we're all doing, is like the hairs are standing up on our collective arms. It's kind of like that. It's an awakening time. And this is why all that intensity, the furthering of intensity, the square of the karmic axis putting pressure, putting pressure. So it's like tapping. When you have these nodes, when anything is square the nodes, what you have is, one's being ignited, the other's being ignited, that's being ignited, this being ignited, and they're kind of fragmented and they're disjointed in terms of how they're being accessed. Uranus is revolutionary. It is awakening. It is cut to the chase stuff. It is bringing that up. The Leo piece is continuing to create, and this is it's bringing up or awakening the content that is held in the cellular memory. That's the trauma consciousness of the collective, right? But at the same time, the sun, the north node, are creative. So they keep supplying additional information. They keep supplying additional creative to this whole program. So, it's a continuous supply. As I go through tomorrow, I'll have more memories to add to today, right? So that's what that's doing, is continuously doing that, right? But when we have these, it is exactly, the nature of Aquarius, the nature of Aquarius is in terms of the awakening of the collective. It's like we go, oh, wow, oh my God, that is hideous. Wow. And you give it 3 days and everybody's back to business as usual. It's got that kind of thing about it, outraged, or I'm going to go get them, or I'm going to, or whatever. But then it becomes the norm, that peak only lasts for so long. This dynamic is keeping that intensity up. It's like, don't fall asleep, don't fall asleep, don't fall asleep. That's what it's in actuality doing, until that can be so intensified that something goes snap. Now, if we're looking at, the normal thing that we would do with the nodes is the last node to conjunct the apex planet is the resolution node, right? And again, any T-square, it is the missing angle where the solution resolution should be done, and that would be Scorpio, right? And the Scorpio would be again, transformative and a re-empowerment here, making some kind of change, re-strategizing, rethinking this whole thing called reality, and what it means to be living on this planet, right, is all of that kind of stuff. So as we move forward with this T-square, the last conjunction was the south node to Uranus, and that happened. I was going to look it up, but I didn't. But of course, it happened someplace back there in Capricorn a little while back, right? So that again is busting up the concrete on all of the judgment patterns, all of the consensus You know, the consensus of you, the consensus of it, the consensus, you know, how we have all agreed that this is reality, and how we've all agreed that we have to uphold, you know, whatever structural dynamic is in place, you personally, you know, inside of yourself, and then in your life, and in your social world, and in, you know, your material world, and just all of that. So, you know, this is something that's been an ongoing process. The eclipses are getting to that, you know, like, okay, you know, how much more pressure can we put on? The tighter the orbs are, the you know, this is where, you know, this is a moving chart. This is where we're getting to the point of action, you know, with the square to the nodal axis. We're like, you know, come to it, we fall back, we come to it, we fall back. By the time these things, whatever I said with Uranus, October, November, Uranus is going to be surpassing the exact square to the karmic axis. And by the way, the karmic axis is also going to switch into Cancer, Capricorn, right? You know, so, you know, it's this process that is ongoing. Mars is an activation on that. And again, bringing up more attention so that we can do this work, you know, so that's all that dynamic. You are being supplied with creative opportunity here. And this is, you know, it is this, you know, this is flip-flop, you know, back and forth that happens between what's going on out there. You know, you are impacted by the social milieus. You know, whatever is happening out there is, you know, you're taking a hit with it. Whatever, you know, Trump is doing with trade is going to trickle down into your life sooner or later, if not now, pretty soon, right? You know, you've got that component. So you've got how the exposure to the collective climate is now impacting you, and you have the Sun North Node, which is going to say my personal life. So I've got my personal life journey, I've got me and how I'm creating for me, and then I've got the we part of it, and both of those things are now being energized, and they may be in conflict. I can't do me because we is in the way, you know, and we is going so fast that I'm having a hard time, you know, getting myself up to speed. You know, it's like both of those things. That's what's taking place right now with this T-square.
Excuse me, Rose.
Yes.
Yes, we'll have to wind down. We're just about, we're at the end of time.
All right. Did I give you enough with that, Carolyn?
You really did. You made the hairs on my arms stand up. It really hit home. Thank you very much.
That was a great explanation. Thank you so much for that. The Uranus skip step, and thanks, Carolyn, for your question. So, Rose, thank you so much. What a wonderful meeting. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Would you all please thank Rose Marcus, everyone?
Thank you, Rose.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Just excellent.